Good morning. I'm Joan Hertz, the board chair for Edmonton Airport's Board of Directors, and thank you for joining us here at Edmonton Airport's 2022 annual public meeting. With me is our President and CEO, Tom Ruth. Welcome, Tom. I would like to start our meeting with acknowledging that Edmonton International Airport recognizes the ancestral and traditional territory of Treaty 6, the Métis homeland and Métis Nation of Alberta Region 4. Treaty 6 is the gathering place and traveling route of the Cree, Saulteaux, Blackfoot, Métis, Dene, and Nakota Sioux. And I thoughtfully acknowledge the many First Nations, Métis, and Inuit whose footsteps have marked these lands for centuries and whose voices are so important in paving a path forward together in reconciliation. So thank you for joining us today for this year's annual public meeting. We are broadcasting digitally again this year. After doing it this way for the last couple of years, we realized we can reach a wider audience, and of course, safety is always our number one priority. We are also simulcasting in ASL, American Sign Language, and you can also access this meeting in French. If you have any questions, please email them to us at apm@flyeia.com. And if you missed that, it's on our website, but it's apm@flyeia.com. So thanks again to Kiwi Productions for once again managing this live stream. And most importantly, I want to start today by thanking Tom Ruth, our CEO, and the entire team at EIA and Villanova Airports for your just incredible work this past year. It was yet another year of surprise and having to have dynamic and innovative reactions to what the economy and the world opening and closing and reopening stops and starts did to us. So thank you for all of your work leading us through this past year. And to all of our strong community of employees and partners and tenants who really stuck together and made this year as successful as it was. I'd also like to now recognize my fellow board members who are with us today: Angelina Bakshi, Chris Burrows, Howard Eng, Mona Hale, Murray Hales, Tim Hofstra, Daryl Jones, Sandra Morocco, Steve McClelland, Carmen McNary, Dave Mowat, and Jay Ramatar. We really do have a great board of directors. We have deep skill sets from many different parts of industry and also diverse perspectives, which only leads to better decision making. And on that note, one of our main responsibilities as a board is setting the stage for the future through strategic planning. And right now we're about halfway through our 2020 to 24 strategic plan, which is aptly titled Innovation Expansion. We have, of course, had to adapt it and update it over the years to respond to the ever-changing environment that keeps coming at us. But the people on our board really possess the incredible experience and knowledge necessary to guide us through this. And we're confident that our direction will steer the plane, so to speak, towards greatness. And please know that we always have the best interests of the airport and our region at heart as a board. Now, the responsibility of both airports, Edmonton International Airport and Villanova Airport, are to serve our region in a number of ways. One is fulfilling our mission of driving economic prosperity through aviation and commercial development, and that is, of course, driven by our core business of air service. So with that introduction, I think it's time to get to it. So today we are having a bit of a conversation, a bit of a question and answer with our President and CEO, Tom Ruth. And so Tom, I'd like to ask you, if you were to summarize the year, sort of at a high level, what would you say the highlights of 2021 were?
Well, thanks, Joan. I would say, first of all, the start of the recovery from the effects of the pandemic. 2021 was another challenging year for the aviation industry. It almost goes without saying, but we stayed the course and we prepared for a larger recovery. We increased our passenger numbers to 2.79 million, and that's after last year The first year of COVID, 2020, we had 2.6 million. And so by the end of 2021, though, and on a positive way, you talk about recovery, we were serving 45 nonstop destinations, and that's up from 11 earlier in the year. So a fourfold increase over the course of a year. So well on the way to recovery.
Yeah, it's just a relief, to start to see those signs of recovery in passenger numbers and people getting to travel again. Any highlights you'd add in cargo and logistics?
For sure. On cargo, our cargo volumes were up 5%. That's a new record. Our Port Alberta concept was reinvigorated. We'll probably talk about that a little bit more later. And really, Port Alberta is where air, rail, pipelines, roadways converge with favorable regulations and incentives to create a regional manufacturing, cargo, and logistics hub.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that sort of high level. I'm actually going to delve into each of those with you today in a few minutes. But I think also in 2021, EIA really made some great strides in ESG. That's environmental, social, and governance leadership. And, it really is immersed in everything that we do, starting with environment. Maybe you can share some of the key achievements from last year from the environmental perspective.
Absolutely. It's so important. EIA is the first airport first airport in the world to sign the Amazon Climate Pledge. We also have a unique partnership with Air Canada. It's the first time in Canada we've had an airport and a major carrier sign a partnership that focuses on initiatives to promote a cleaner environment. We're working on a solar farm. We'll talk about more electrification of aviation equipment, hydrogen fuel cell technologies, development of sustainable aviation fuels, replacement of single-cell plastics with plant-based fibers, really supporting international efforts for the nonprofit group. A good example is like the United for Wildlife, which is to stop the illegal trafficking of wildlife and wildlife products. So many developments going on.
Yeah, and I mean that, even just listening to you list them all, that's not anything that we can do in isolation. So that's, I think, finding the right partners with the same goals and values has been really important as well for us to have had this greater success. So it's really great to see those partnerships that were formed in 2021. So when you look at the S in ESG, that would be the social side. There were some important partnerships built there too. Can you talk about those?
For sure. When I think about that, let's start with our focus on reconciliation, increasing our connections with regional Indigenous communities. We are in full development right now of an Indigenous interpretive center in the terminal. It'll open this summer. It'll show a lot about shared history, culture, teachings, and more of Indigenous communities. And it's an experience that I think will be unique to EIA. It won't be found at any other airport.
Really cool. Now, how did you, in just even figuring out how to build that project, how did you make sure that it was authentic?
Well, we established an elders and knowledge keepers circle to help guide the project. It's something we've been doing it about every month and a half as this project's gone underway. We have found it so valuable because this isn't something that we're putting together ourselves at the airport. It's something that we're working directly with many Indigenous communities to put together. And we learn a lot through these elders and knowledge circles. So that guidance is really critical for us.
That'll be great. Yeah, I look forward to that. So that's opening this year. So we'll all be able to see that.
We'll all be able to see it.
That's great. Another term that I've heard you use a lot is an airport for everyone. So I just wanted to ask you, can you explain to us, what do you mean by that exactly?
For sure. Making an airport for everyone starts internally. So EIA is a safe, welcoming, accessible airport. We're committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We have an ongoing strategy to enhance internal and external efforts. And some of these are, we have a barrier-free committee. We also support the LGBTQ plus community, particularly in relation to supporting tourism efforts there, supporting veterans through an Edge for Vets program. And we're also proud to support Elevate Aviation, which promotes education and careers in aviation for women and Indigenous groups.
That's great. And I think it's also on that airport for everyone, though. People don't always think about it, but how we make our way around the airport. Can you talk a little bit about some of the tools that you put into the terminal last year that helped everyone feel welcome and comfortable?
Absolutely. There's some recent tools we've put into place. We're in phase one of a visual paging system, and that started about a year ago. It's for passengers with listening with hearing difficulties, and phase two is coming in 2022. And also in 2022, we're joining Airport Network, and this helps visually impaired passengers navigate the airport. It helps them get to their gates, washrooms, or one of our many shops, restaurants, and services.
It's really great. And then I think the G in ESG is governance. And, you know, the board really set the foundation in governance to build upon in future years. And we are quite proud at EIA we work constantly to continuously improve our governance practices. And this includes obviously getting the right diverse perspectives around the table, as I mentioned earlier, but then it's also making sure that we have the right policies and processes in place to enable us to have strong governance. We have risk-based approach to how we look at things each quarter. We have ethics policies in place. We have a new vendor code of conduct and new procurement policies to support small, local, and equity supporting businesses. And I think, as with many of you listening, our focus also is on IT and cybersecurity. And this past year, we heard of much of that risk increasing. And I think so the G in governance matters because we have to have the plans in place and the policies and the tools to ensure that we have the right governance in place. And our board works very hard on that oversight. But Tom, I now want to turn to, really the core of our business. Yeah. And that's cargo and air service. And we talked a lot last year about how difficult it was and how much we had lost. And now I think there has actually been a bit of a turnaround. 2021, we saw some positive growth start to happen, although it stopped and started. But start at the very beginning. I hear you talk about how Edmonton has some really unique advantage because of where we are in the world. Can you start there? Talk to me about why. What is it about Edmonton's location?
Absolutely. First advantage we have is that, well, let's just talk about the three geographic advantages that we have. The one geographic advantage we have is that we're 7,700 acres. So we are the largest, we have the largest landmass of any airport, any major airport in Canada. And secondly is we're on the northern circumpolar route. And being on the northern circumpolar route means that we're the shortest distance for flight paths for planes coming from Europe and from Asia. And that is a big plus for us as we go forward, particularly with cargo logistics. And then we also are the gateway to the north. We always were and always will be the gateway to the north. And you couple that with a whole bunch of other things, which is one is that we have 724 operations, so uninhibited 724 operations. It allows, we're one of only 3 major airports in Canada that have that. We have incredible workforce efficiencies. The work ethic for all those in the airport community, frankly, for all those in our region is excellent and well known globally. Other infrastructure advantages. Highway 2 that is in Edmonton goes through the U.S. and into Mexico, so that helps with trucking. We have the 2 long runways, which are huge for us. They allow wide-body flights to go all over the world. We have 2 of the largest fuel tanks almost in the world, 2 million-liter fuel tanks that give us inexpensive fuel. And then you'll see on the map, we actually show Prince Rupert. So why are we showing Prince Rupert on the map? It's mainly because once commerce goes by air, particularly e-commerce, is that once we get enough SKUs or popular items that are going by air, companies like Amazon, DHL, and others want to also move things by ocean. And so what we're seeing, this big trend that's happened over the last couple of years, is that things that are after it's come by air, people want these popular SKUs come by ocean. Let's say, use an example, let's say from Japan. Well, if you look at the curvature of North America, geographically, you'll see Prince Rupert is closest to Asia than any other port. So these ocean vessels that are coming into North America arrive in Prince Rupert a day, day and a half, sometimes 2 days sooner than they do in other ports in Western North America. And then they get offloaded quickly, and those goods end up on a train that their first stop in North America inland is Edmonton. So one of the reasons you're seeing all these warehouses sprout up all over Edmonton, Amazon and others, is because it's this whole combination of our increase in air cargo by air combined with this ocean freight and these ocean containers that's being loaded in warehouses in Edmonton, so that if you're from Ottawa or you're in Kansas or somewhere else, these popular SKUs can quickly get to you from our Edmonton International Airport to the final destination. So all these things are unique advantages for us long term.
See, so being this far north isn't just for the great weather and the
That's right.
mosquitoes in the summer. You mentioned earlier that cargo volumes increased by 5% last year over 2020 numbers. Why do you think that trended upwards even though we were in the pandemic?
So there are a few reasons for that. One is that, and I should state, that 5% increase was after a record in 2020. And 2020 was a combination of, we moved a lot of PPE equipment and other COVID-related medical supplies with this increase in, this burgeoning increase in e-commerce. But we also saw that a lot of our local businesses were moving more export products. So that helped us quite a bit. And all those things put together, the innovation and some of the economic development. And then we also have this Port Alberta that I mentioned earlier. And so Port Alberta used to be pretty much located around the airport. And that's now been expanded to include the entire Edmonton metro region. So everybody has access to these advantages. And then we've also had we've been blessed with some infrastructure funding. The federal government gave us $18 million for some infrastructure funding, and we matched with $18 million for a total of $36 million in funding. And the project that we're developing with that money includes an expanded apron space, a new runway connection, a new hydrant system for faster and safer refueling, and tripling our cold storage capacity. It's also creating 360 jobs.
That's great. Jobs, right? That's what people want to hear. And I mean, the other highlights that come to mind, we also welcomed Amazon Air and EFC Cargo and Swissport Cargo joined the airport community. And what I think is super cool is the drones. So in December, EIA became Canada's first airport to begin regularly scheduled drone delivery operations within a restricted airspace, which and that's only going to grow, right? Like that drone delivery. And we have partners with Apple and others on that, right? So that's very cool. So that's a lot of great news on cargo, but let's switch a little bit to the passenger side. We talked about a total of 2.79 million passengers by the end of 2021, which just sounds like a big number to me. But can you tell us, like, how does that compare? Put that in context to sort of previous years, and is that a big number? Is that not a big number in terms of passenger numbers?
Absolutely. So the 2.79 is an improvement over 2020, which was 2.6, but far from our normal numbers. We normally have close to 8.2 million passengers. Having said all that, we actually did quite well. That increase from 2.79 from 2.6, we actually did better than it may appear, because you might remember in 2020, the first few months of 2020 were full months of full passenger traffic, and then it slowed down. So if we look at the rate of recovery in those numbers, in the pre and post-COVID numbers, we probably had about a 50% improvement in 2021 versus 2020. And that bodes well for the future, as we're seeing even more growth as we get into 2021, as we get through 2022. We finished 2021 with 45 nonstop destinations. And as I was talking earlier, it's up from 11 in the spring of 2021. And you might remember that time frame where EIA and most other airports had their international service suspended, and it didn't return until August. So some of our priorities for recovery, by the way, include securing more low-cost carrier routes, more U.S. routes in both the East and the West Coast, and as well as international routes for cargo and passenger flights.
That's great. Honestly, and everyone wants to hear more about the new routes. I know that's the question I get more than anything. So that's quite a few new routes for 2020, and I was really honored to be able to go a couple of weeks ago with Mayor Sohi and some other folks from Edmonton on the recently launched direct flight to Nashville with Flair. Flair, who are headquartered at Edmonton International Airport. But I think people want to hear about more of the destinations. So can you maybe share with us a few more recently not launched destinations or soon to launch destinations that we've got, direct flights?
Absolutely, and these flights are so important. You can look at this slide that's on the screen now, but there are air pipelines, and these nonstop air pipelines create lots of economic development. So we're really pleased with some of these flights. So I'll share some of these flights with you now. We have there are actually 55 of these flights, so we've got a fivefold increase from 2021. So some of the destinations you mentioned the Nashville flight, which was great. We've also have Ottawa on Swoop, which started in April. Also in April, we have Alaska Airlines that launched. The San Francisco flight, I was on that inaugural flight May 1st. I just got back the day before yesterday. That was a great flight. And just talking about San Francisco, 40% of the world's, 40% of the U.S. venture capital is spent in the Silicon Valley. So you can imagine how important that flight is to us to have that. Denver launches June 3rd. St. John's resumes July 1st with WestJet. Lynx Air, the new ultra-low-cost carrier, launches on July 28th. And just wanted to talk a little about KLM because about a month and a half ago, KLM began its return to service out of Edmonton in terms of a big way, many times a week. And there's a flight that's very timely to talk about. On May 7th, we are going to be involved. Edmonton, and in conjunction with KLM, is going to be involved on a flight from Amsterdam to Edmonton on a sustainability flight. And I want to give you a little bit of background of this. Is the entire Sky Miles network, all those international carriers, have decided to have a contest that on May 7th, each of them could pick one destination, one global destination, to fly a international route to and to promote sustainability. So KLM, and again, they have well over 100 international destinations. They chose Edmonton, and so I'm excited. Later today, I'll be flying over to Amsterdam, and I'll be on that return flight on Saturday with the CEO of KLM, with Mayor Sohi from Edmonton, and it's going to be, first of all, it's a wonderful honor that we were chosen from all those global destinations, but more importantly, it's going to highlight a lot of the environmental sustainability initiatives that are going on in Edmonton working with airlines.
That's just great. Again, Edmonton getting chosen, Edmonton at the top, just great work. And on the sustainability side of aviation, which is the future. That's excellent. So if you look back at 2021, we're starting to move more into normal operations, but COVID was still present, is still present. And as operations started to ramp up again, you start every meeting with this, Tom. So I have to ask you this, what was your focus and as you started up knowing we're going back to normal operations, but COVID's still around?
Well, the good thing is what's always been most important to us at the airport is safety. In fact, when people ask all of us in the airport community what we do, in one sentence, what we say is, after safety and security, our role is to create economic prosperity in our region in a fiscally responsible way. So safety and security are always at the forefront. And of course, that means health is at our forefront. So some of the things we've done during COVID, we partnered with Numi Health for COVID testing. Over 12,000 passengers have gone through COVID testing at the airport ahead of their flights, as well as almost 2,000 employee tests in 2021. So we're doing a lot of things. We've also invested in touchless technologies. So we have at touchless check-in machines. We have UVC lighting that's on the railing of our stairways. We're the first place in Alberta to have that. Contactless parking, automated cashiers. We suspended our valet service during COVID just out of an abundance of caution. We've also had some certifications. Airport Health Accreditation Program, it's a worldwide organization, certified us, as well as the GBAC Star Destination Accreditation, which we shared with 10 other institutions in Edmonton. So we continue to do our best to ensure that all of us are safe.
Yeah. And, I think these things are all very, very important to passengers. And now it seems like it's just table stakes for us. But what we all appreciate is that you're constantly innovating and constantly trying to find the new way that you can create a safe airport. And so great to hear that. And you can see just the numbers up on the screen are just kind of mind-boggling, how much you actually do behind the scenes to keep the airport safe and clean. And that's why we're able to achieve all those accreditations, really. And that's why people can continue to fly safely. So as everyone knows, you say safety and security are number one. So not just on the cleanliness and health side of things, what else was done in 2021 on that sort of safety and security vein?
Well, we conducted emergency exercises. We do them often, but we kept up that even during COVID with the slowdown. We also partnered with the RCMP and Action Coalition on Human Trafficking Alberta to develop human trafficking awareness training. We had more than 1,000 frontline employees trained in the terminal, and we actually developed this training working with others. So we're the leaders in Canada for this program. That program is now being rolled out in many other places across Canada, and we continued our partnership with Not in My City, which is another initiative to promote awareness of human trafficking. So this is a major global problem, human trafficking, and airports have a role to play in identifying and preventing it.
Yeah, that's great. Excellent. And I think as we recover from the pandemic, the other thing that I hear you saying is we're not going to just go back to doing things like we did before. And we're looking at how we did everything and re-examining how we might do it differently and reimagining how you can create a different passenger experience. And I know that you've been working on some innovation on the retail operations and the passenger experience side of things. Can you talk a little bit about one or two of those?
For sure, and maybe I'll start just by talking about our ASQ scores before I get into some of the a couple of the facility improvements. Is we had our best ever global ASQ scores. ASQ is a global institution that ranks airports in terms of how they're handling passengers and customer service delivery. They rate us on 30 different elements, and we had our highest scores ever, which we're really, really proud of. They take cleanliness into account, security, and just how well we're treating our passengers. But we're also doing that with our facilities. So in July of last year, Canadian Brewhouse opened, and they opened in a very innovative and efficient manner. What we've done at Canadian Brewhouse is we have one kitchen that services two locations, Canadian Brewhouse. So Canadian Brewhouse is on the secure side of the airport, as well as on the non-secure side, right next to security. So think about that efficiency. Not only can you service passengers on either side of the airport, or passengers on one side and employees and other people that work at airport on the other side. You can even have Uber Eats delivery on the non-secure side. So very, very efficient. And that all started with an initiative that we pioneered with Transport Canada with Deluxe Burger Bar a few years back, where we got permission to be able to handle food on both sides, the secure and unsecure side of the airport. So it's pretty interesting. We actually send the food through security, and by doing that, we're able to be more efficient.
Well, and not only the food, but we are also one of the only airports that has a liquor license through the whole airport. So you can actually take your drink from the brew house to your gate. Is that right?
Right. On the secure side of the airport,
Yeah.
We have a stadium license, so it allows a little bit more comfort and flexibility to move around the airport.
Yeah, it's pretty great. Comfort and flexibility, that's what we'll call it. Yeah. So that's great. But so that's some of the in-terminal innovation, but you have also been very busy on the commercial development side of the business. And we have what we very fondly call our Airport City sustainability campus, which in short is our airport city. There has been a lot of work done on some innovative partnerships there. Can you share a few of those? What's going on in Airport City?
Absolutely. So we're partnering with NTT Smart Solutions for digital on-demand bus service within Airport City. Again, we have so many offerings at our airport and so many different places where buses can pick people up and take them to other destinations around the airport. And that means that puts a strain on bus services in terms of having buses run through the whole gamut of those different locations. So now we have basically on-demand passenger bus service using the NTT. And that allows for passengers to get a bus quicker. It also means that our buses don't run empty and they don't use all those extra emissions. So it's a win-win. We're providing better passenger service and better service, frankly, for workers that are going to different parts of the airport, as well as helping the planet. The other things, though, what we're doing is we have an Agcelerator, which is a food production, contract packaging, and market development facility. We also have WeFaces, which is a solar LED manufacturer on the airport. And a little while ago, Emmy DeVoe, a local fashion designer, came on airport and is able to put almost just-in-time fashion delivery around Canada and, in fact, North America. Alternate route coffee roasters just entered on the airport. And we also announced a partnership with Edmonton-based Uproot Food Collective to build a new Canadian Food Inspection Agency certified food production, contract packaging, and market development facility. The federal government actually invested $550,000 via Prairie Can funding for that. So Airport City is a magnet for investment, attracting more than $1.5 billion in private investment over the past 9 years.
It's just huge, right? It's just that's a huge part of our ability to drive economic prosperity and development for the region, one of our reasons for existing. That's great. And I think the other big news is we will be breaking ground this year on Airport City Solar, which is, it's so big, it's almost hard to get the numbers in your head. 624 acre solar farm, and it's going to be the largest solar farm on any airport in the world. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
For sure. When I think about Airport City Solar, not only over 600 acres, 340,000 panels, enough to power 28,000 homes, and most importantly, offset 106,000 tons of CO2 annually. And it really reflects our ongoing commitment and dedication to decarbonization and sustainability. It'll be a game changer.
Yeah, it will in solar. And then still on the sustainability bent, we also had a project started by one of our employees called Cogen, right? So what is that exactly?
So Cogen is a great facility in terms of it's a way to reduce our carbon footprint using innovative technology. And this just came online almost a year ago, our Cogen facility. And even last year, in a partial year, we saved $771,000 in utility savings. But more importantly, we reduced our carbon footprint 23%. So this is a $12 million facility that will not only be economically important for us in terms of those results, but more importantly, it will reduce our carbon footprint and help the world.
Yeah, and that's Cogen. But what about, you've got a couple other projects, I think, that you're working on in sustainability that are quite innovative, like your fuel systems?
Absolutely. We're working with innovative fuel systems. It's an Edmonton-based company that reduces greenhouse gas emissions in transportation. And Wild and Pine, another company which the Prime Minister just visited about a week and a half ago, supports the acceleration towards net zero emissions through the restoration of Canadian forest. It actually uses an advanced vertical growing environment for native tree and shrub seedlings, which produce 3 times the number of crops in optimized growing conditions. So we're also part of the Alberta Hemp Alliance, and that's to test hemp growth and carbon sequestration potential. We actually grow 40 acres of hemp at the airport just to kind of test the sequestration and to look at some of the innovative technologies with hemp. Hemp is amazing. It actually sequesters 7 times faster and better than a normal tree. So we're looking at all the value-added components of hemp, which is used in construction as well as for clothing. We also have a technology campus, which is a hub that is for leading and emerging technologies from all sectors, including clean tech, proteins, pharma, and autonomous systems. And the campus actually supports more than 300 jobs, and it stimulates millions in economic development, and it's forging like next generation of innovation and technology jobs in the region.
It's kind of mind-boggling. Like, I think people drive to the airport and park their car and get on the plane, and they don't realize that all that amazing, innovative economic development work is happening all around on Airport City Sustainability Campus. So it's just fabulous. So I want to actually make sure we have time to also speak about our other important airport, which is at Villanova. And there were some pretty great things happening there in 2021 as well. So can you just talk a little bit about what happens at Villanova and what happened this past year?
Absolutely. I'll start off by saying Villanova Airport is our region's premier general aviation airport and flight training facility. It generates $62 million in economic impact, and we've had a great year of events. We had more than 30,000 people in August attend the Alberta International Air Show, and we'll be back again this year. And if you haven't gone to the air show, it's a must. It's wonderful. We also signed an MOU with Sturgeon County this past summers for economic development around the airport. So this will help collaboratively attract investments and drive economic growth in the region. We also announced the start of construction to connect the airport to the hamlet of Villanova water supply. That actually water supply was a $2.2 million project funded by provincial government with help from Sturgeon County helping to get that approved. And that it's through the municipal stimulus program. It's been in the works for a long time, so we're really happy to see it come to fruition because it'll really help the overall economic impact for the entire region around that airport.
That's great. Yeah, and just, really great to talk about the great things happening at both airports this past year in 2021. And on behalf of the board, we're just so proud of all of the work that the airport has accomplished. And a big thanks to you, to your employees, to our partners, tenants, and passengers using the airport, our regional mayors, our community, and our region. So I think it's time that we want to talk for a few minutes about our financial situation.
Yes.
So maybe, Tom, if you can just give us a bit of context about what obviously with the reduction in passenger numbers, that has a pretty significant impact on us. But how did things look last year financially?
For sure. I mean, the finances were devastating in the aviation community. There's no question about that. All airports carry debt, and we're no different. We get 90% of our revenues directly or indirectly from passengers. So you can imagine the effect that had on us during COVID when you heard me talk about the passenger numbers in the 2.5 million ranges when they're usually at 8.2 million. So yet we really got good cooperation from our debt holders. We outperformed our forecast in 2021 and managed our debt prudently. So some comparisons between 2020 and 2021. Again, our revenues in 2020 were 103 million, and our revenues in 2021 were 109 million. So what we saw an increase in revenues, and that's actually quite good to see because you might remember earlier I was talking about the pace of growth, and considering 2020 had about 1/6 of the time, 2 of the months we were at full capacity. So we did quite well in generating more revenue in 2021 than we did in 2020. So that was we had about a 14% improvement in our overall efficiency as well. We ended up with our cost savings, we saved about 14% in terms of looking at our overall loss. So we lost about 89 million in 2020 and 76 million in 2021. So again, that was 14, 50% improvement. So we're back, at least on moving in the right direction in those areas.
Yeah, and I think it's also your management, it's a credit to your management team because it was through prudent management that you were able to fund those operating losses from existing cash reserves. What about our any steps taken to improve our liquidity position now?
Absolutely. Just a couple of things I want to mention here. One is that everybody, all the employees at the airport treated our budget like their home budget, and that helped. And so a really shout out to everybody that did that during these difficult circumstances. We also did a bond issue in March of 2021, and that bond issue, we raised $200 million. It was 3 times oversubscribed, which is phenomenal. It really shows the faith that the really the global financial institutions saw in our airport. We had the 4th lowest long-term bond issue of that type ever in the Canadian history. So that is a real tribute to our airport. And then another thing that I think is really important about Edmonton International Airport is that we pay down our debt every year. A lot of airports have what they call bullet debt, which is long-term debt. At the end of that debt period, you still need to pay down that debt, so you're just paying interest on the debt. Most of our debt is like a home mortgage debt where we're paying down that debt each year. So even during COVID, if you look at last year, we paid down almost $42 million of our debt. And about, again, 85% of our debt is in that principal pay down category, which is a little more conservative way to operate an airport, but a prudent way, and particularly when you're in a downturn. It sets us up quite well for the recovery because of our liquidity situation actually improved by $110 million at the end of 2021, which will allow us to invest in many of these things we've been talking about.
Yeah, we are. As difficult as it's been, we're in pretty good shape. And I would mention that our full financial statements and more information on everything that we presented today, of course, can be found in our 2021 annual report, which is on the website, the airport's website. So thank you, Tom. Your leadership at the airport has really gone far beyond all the simple numbers and statistics that we've talked about today. You have just quite simply been a game changer. And your vision and your ability to imagine what's possible and then set us up so that EIA is actually able to make it happen has just been amazing to see. And I know that we're well positioned to take advantage of all these bold plans that we have for growth and innovation in the coming years. And I know you've announced that you will be retiring, that you will be moving on from the airport at the end of 2022, and we will have lots of opportunity to recognize you. But I wanted to take a moment here today to say thank you for all that you've done for the airport these past 9 years. And that's it. Get back to work.
Well, thanks.
Fun part over. No.
But I do want to say something along those lines. And first of all the things that we've talked about, the accomplishments through adversity, doesn't happen because of me. It happens because of all the people that work in the airport community and all our employees. And I wish I could list them all, but there's in a normal year, there's 26,000 direct and indirect people working there, and a lot of airport employees that have done so much. But there are 4 that I'm going to mention in particular here, and those are the 4 executives that work directly with me. We used to have 7 executives, and like many organizations through COVID, is we needed to consolidate more in order to be more nimble to move forward. And so I'll just mention them by name. I'll start with Leslie Kwasney. Leslie is our CFO, and she's also runs our strategy. She's our main facilitator of our strategy. She also runs our legal entity, and she runs our people strategy. And next, I'll mention Tara Mulrooney. Tara runs all our technology as VP of Technology, and she also runs all our innovation. And then I'll talk about Steve Mabey. Steve Mabey runs, as our Vice President, runs our operations group, he runs our infrastructure group, and he runs our communication group. And then we also have Myron Keene, who's over in Europe right now. He runs our business development and all our air service development. So a combination of all those people, and particularly the people that are guiding us through all this, makes a big difference as we go forward.
That's great. So that brings an end to today's presentation portion. And it was our pleasure to be able to share this past year's highlights with you. But we do have some time to answer some questions that may have been sent in by our audience, or those that were sent in advance by email and social media. So would you like to read them, Tara? I can read them because you're probably going to have to answer them. So airports around the world are short-staffed. As EIA traffic is forecast to grow and recover this year, what plans are in place to restaff both the airport and the partners on site? Yeah,
Well, first of all,
it's a hard one.
that's a hard one, and I'll also say I think all of us during COVID realized how important, if we didn't before, how important all our frontline employees are at an airport, whether you're a cleaner or you're working on the ramp, or you're working in food service, or whatever role you have. Every role is so critical, and we're finding that out even more now globally as we start to recover, and that there just aren't as many people that are working in different areas. So one of the challenges we have in the airport community is that in order to work on the airport, and particularly the secure side of the airport, you have to have a special pass. You have to have been vetted so that you're allowed to work on the secure side of the airport. So for many airports, you're seeing that's a process that takes some time. So as we're ramping up, it's a little bit more difficult to get those people in place to keep pace with the recovery. And so if you're traveling a lot, you may see in different airports or different cities that it's a bit of a strain on right now. And so our challenge is that we need to keep making sure we nurture all the people that are working with us, that we make sure it's easy for them to come to work, and that retention is going to become critical. Mm-hmm. We've been relatively fortunate here in Edmonton. Our recovery is going quite well, in spite of the fact that that maybe it's a challenge to bring workers back. The pace of that seems to be going pretty well right now, but definitely globally, it's a real issue to make sure that we have enough people to handle all these jobs.
And I think also your work with Elevate Aviation to make sure that you're able to attract that diverse workforce, like they work closely with groups who are underrepresented in aviation. So I hope that also brings our problems with labor shortages down. All right, we have another question. It looks like Edmonton is regaining a lot of its air service destination. What next destination is at the top of the list of the attraction efforts? Well, I wonder if I get to add, do I get to say
Sure.
mine?
Go ahead.
The one I hear a lot is East Coast of the U.S. Like, yeah. They're not picky where, but I think that whole East Coast of the U.S., but I shouldn't jump the queue.
No,
what were you going to say?
That's sure. Like, there's a bunch of them, and I don't mind mentioning them. And some of them, for sure, like the East Coast. Like overall, when we look at our filter that we look at for air service, we're looking at for sure East and West Coast, more flights into the U.S. We're looking at international flights, both for cargo and for passengers, and we're also looking at the lower cost flights. That's important to us, and getting flights back in cities that we had. So some of the flights that come to mind for me, East Coast for sure, and some of the new types of aircraft like the A220 and others are going to be really good for Edmonton going forward. So I think in coming years you're going to see more nonstop flights to the East Coast. And some of the flights we want to get back, I mentioned earlier that Denver's coming back. We want Houston to come back soon. I don't have a date yet, but Houston to come back. One that we want to reinvigorate is Chicago. Chicago is really important to a lot of people for the connections and for the business that we do in Chicago. And we're continually looking at international flights. So I mentioned earlier that our VP Air Service is over in Europe right now. We spend a lot of time looking at particularly more European international service. Over time, we'd like to see, in addition to the cargo flights from Asia, passenger flights from Asia, It takes a long time to get an international flight, but we're getting a name recognition for many of the things that we're doing in sustainability and cargo and other things. And so that's going to make it that much easier to get more flights. The other advantage we have here in our region is it's not just about the airport going after flights. We have our whole municipalities, all our municipalities and our business community is helping. And so we have an air service fund that is helping to generate and reinvigorate some of these flights. And we have the business community behind them. All of that is going to make a big difference going forward. So a really good question.
Yeah, and we can all do our part. Park at the airport, eat at the airport, use the airport to fly. Use
Absolutely.
these direct destinations. Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right. Do we have another question? Yes, we do. You mentioned the airport's focused on sustainability today. A lot of companies talk the talk, but it seems like you're actually walking the walk. Why is environmental sustainability important to you, and what project or projects are you most looking forward to?
Well, that's a great question. One of the things I love about sustainability and the emphasis we've been putting on in recent years, both the board working with management and working with the community, is that it's one of these things that's such a win-win. First of all, it's going to help save our planet. And it's so important for our kids and our grandkids and future generations. And there's actually a way to do it where you can do it in a financially viable way. And we actually think at Edmonton International Airport that the more we get involved in sustainability and with our partners, the more we're going to be attractive long-term to airlines to create more flights. Everybody is going to be looking to reduce their emissions as they still want to go and see the world and meet relatives. And so that is going to be a competitive edge for us going forward. The solar farm we talked about earlier is a big plus. The cogen facility that we talked about, a lot of the things we're doing with our LEED certified buildings, really, and picking partners that we have that also share that vision with us, like the sustainability flight with KLM that I mentioned, like the partnership we have with Air Canada, like the work we're doing with other airlines. All those are going to make a difference, I think, long term to increase these nonstop air pipelines out of our region.
Okay, that's great. I'm just looking to see if we see any other questions coming in. And I don't see any more, but I did have one. Oh, there's one. Why do we not have more nonstops?
Well, the good thing is that we're getting more nonstops now. That's always been a challenge for us, but I think what that really refers to is we were down to 11 flights for a while during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And why did those flights take a while to come back? Well, what really happened was airlines were looking to fill out the hubs first. They had to work to fill out their hubs, and they had to bring pilots back. They had to get planes recertified. So those nonstops took a while to develop, and now we've had some acceleration, and we're in good shape. We're actually going to have more nonstops at the end of this summer than we did pre-COVID. And which reminds me of just a couple things in closing, at least our comments, now that we're done with these questions, is just what's another thing maybe to think about at the airport. And Joe mentioned what you can do about buying things at the airport, because everything you buy at the airport, whether you buy coffee or you park, all that goes right back into the airport, gets reinvested back in the airport. So that's really a good thing. But the other thing I should just share right now is on these nonstop flights, really take a look at websites. Take a look at our website in terms of what flights are available. Look at a few different websites when you're looking for flights, because these flights are coming so quickly, and you may be very surprised that, hey, I didn't realize we had a nonstop flight to Tucson, or we had a nonstop flight to San Diego, or we have this nonstop to Nashville, and these flights are all coming so quickly. And just check a bunch of websites, and I think you'll find some really good bargains on these flights as really good connections. And the other thing I would just urge everybody flying right now, it is picking up so fast that if you can come to the airport sooner, if you could actually go through security, give yourself, if it's normally an hour, give yourself 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours. Plus, there's some fun things to do at the airport. So, just in order to reduce your stress level at the airport in terms of this all coming back so quickly, just give yourself a little bit of extra time.
Yeah, that was my next question actually, was like, what's the inside track hints for passengers? So go to our website, right? Because
Yes.
it's a bit of a source of truth. Like the Fly EIA website has a lot of information and hyperlinks to the things people always ask me, like, where do I see whether I need this testing or what I need to do or whether the airlines will let me, whatever. There's actually a lot of information on there. So please do visit our website. So I think that is all the time that we have for today. If you did email a question that didn't get answered, we will reply to you by email in the coming days. So thank you so much, all of you, for joining us today. And again, our annual report is live. You can read it in French or English on our website. And it was a great year, and it was wonderful to have you with us today. And we wish you all the best for the rest of the day. And please come back to the airport, travel often. Have a great day. Bye.